How's everybody doing? My name is Mike Hensley and I'm a naturalist with Erie MetroParks. Today we're going to be talking about ecology, specifically wetland ecology. So when people hear that term ecology, you can get a little bit freaked out. You think you're going to get into a really big science lecture, but we as humans and people actually benefit very heavily from a wetland type habitat. Wetlands serve a variety of purposes, from the plants and animals that live here all the way down to us as humans. We fish in these waters, we paddle on these waters, we boat on these waters, we get some of our water from these waters, helps with things like flood protection, for example. So there are all kinds of things that we as humans can benefit from in terms of wetlands. Ecology is pretty simple. It's basically how plants and other organisms, like us as humans, and vertebrates and invertebrates that might be in the water or close by, how bacteria and fungus, all of these things live kind of or coexist with one another in a specific habitat. And we're speaking of the wetland habitat here. So behind me is East Sandusky Bay. Now this water often moves in and out. So a wetland has characteristics from an aquatic habitat like the lake, for example. It also has terrestrial characteristics, for example, like a prairie or a wooded area. So behind me you can see some wooded area, but there's also aquatic habitat in here as well. So it's kind of like a buffer zone where they kind of interchange. Now, the other thing that makes a wetland unique is the water levels often change. And over the last few years, we've experienced extremely high water levels. This year, the max on our water level is 2 feet up from last year. So that's pretty high, and also can change the landscape structure a little bit and can often make things a little bit different in that habitat. So with an increase in water levels and a variety of different things, we get to see an increase sometimes in invasive species, or invasive species moving into habitat that it hasn't seen before. So for example, one invasive species that we are constantly at battle with is European frogbit. We'll get a chance to take a little peek at that. That's going to harm this ecosystem because it's going to overcrowd native plant species and kind of smother those out and not really give room for the native things to grow that would normally be here. Other things like frag would also be one. Japanese knotweed is another one that can creep into a wetland habitat very quickly, very easily. A wild rush can also be one that creeps in on wetland habitat. Now, when we're thinking about invasives, that affects the overall ecology as well, especially for us humans. It definitely affects how much money we're putting into that ecosystem. We're having to mitigate as well as control more in those habitats in different areas. There's a nice look at that European frogbit. And once this really gets in here and starts to smother out all of the native plants, then you're going to lose some duck species and things that rely on certain vegetation to consume. So now we're going to go and explore the park a little bit and show you some different aspects of this park that exhibit a wetland ecosystem. There are lots of good trails around here. There's some that go in the shade. There are some trails that also cover open prairie-like areas. There's lots and lots of wildlife at this park. This is an excellent spot to view birds, especially in early spring and in late fall throughout winter, especially if you're an onlooker of ducks and geese and waterfowl. So these type of habitats are very, very beneficial to a lot of people without them even knowing it. So wetlands serve a few purposes that are kind of unseen for the most part. So the first is that a wetland habitat is a place for floodwater and heavy rainwaters to sit, to prevent more populated areas from becoming flooded. So what happens is they're excellent at soaking up water. So they'll soak up that water and hold it so that it is not all released into the town or to adjacent houses and things like that. So wetlands tend to be very, very important. Another important fact about wetlands is that a lot of people don't know how much a wetland is beneficial, as well as how little we have. So 6% of the Earth's surface is covered in wetland habitat. So that's transitional habitat from aquatic to terrestrial, or water to land. 75% of that habitat is owned by individual persons, not organizations or governments or park services, which is why wetland restoration is so important, because if we take away all of our wetlands, floods are going to get worse. The second important thing that wetlands do is they're basically a kidney for our water, or a filter. So they're able to retain sediment and filter things like phosphorus and nitrogen that we find in fertilizer and laundry detergents and things like that. So it is very, very important and beneficial that wetlands are here. So filtering out those things, extremely important, because eventually that water is going to get back to us. Now, this is where the park starts to get a little bit wet. You can see a northern leopard frog hopping away there. Whoop. So we talked overall about invasive species control. With this water increasing, we start to see this, some of these aquatic invasive species really start to push themselves further in towards the park. And then once the water recedes, hopefully we'll be able to get in here and manage a little more. But we have purple loosestrife right there, which is a beautiful plant, but is not native to the US and North America here, and can be very, very, it can take over very, very quickly in a habitat like this. We also have the big tall plants over here to your right called Phragmites, which can also take over very, very quickly. You know, managing these are very, very hard. These is very, very time consuming, and often takes years and years to really get under control. So this is a very, very small patch that is in the process of being managed. So wetland ecology is pretty basic in terms of understanding and kind of getting a grasp for what it takes to manage. Some ducks fly off there. What's important is how people can understand how we overall benefit from it. So we might benefit from it physically in terms of, you know, nature might make you happy or excited or curious, but we also benefit, there we go, we have a wood duck. We also benefit from these types of habitats economically. Sportsmen use these. Hunting and fishing are really, really big up here on the bay. Lots of hunters flock here in September to kind of take advantage of the waterfowl that come through. A lot of fishermen in the spring and summer utilize these waters and these wetlands to sport fish, as well as fish for food. All of these things contributing to our economy with people staying and spending money here. There's a lot of economic value in flood control, as we've talked about before. So a lot of things that people don't know. If you are a person who enjoys recreation like paddling, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, all of those things wetlands are crucial for. So we are able to utilize these wetland habitats and enjoy them and get kind of a sense of fulfillment out of them. So when you think of a wetland habitat, you think of boggy, smelly, stinky, mosquito-ridden, which are all accurate things. They do kind of smell. There are a lot of mosquitoes. Those mosquitoes are very beneficial to a lot of birds that fly on the wing and catch things, a lot of amphibians and things that rely on mosquitoes for a food source. So it's very, very beneficial. Everything kind of in this environment has its purpose, with the exception of the invasive species who take over. So if you're a bird lover, wetlands tend to be kind of like when you think about a vacation. For example, like that downy woodpecker there. This tends to be basically a truck stop or a gas station for birds when they're traveling from places like South America and Central America, where they pretty much spend the winter. Then they fly their way back up here north to either mate or stop and then go a little bit further up towards Canada. So this is basically like a gas station where they fuel up with water, food, sometimes take a few days break, because we're talking thousands of miles that some of these birds are flying. So they take a little bit of a break and then they continue on, or they nest right here in these wetland habitats. So wetlands are crucial habitat for bird migration. A lot of what we see with loss of species or endangered species is directly correlated to the loss of wetland habitat. So a third of the species that are endangered or to be at risk of becoming endangered are wetland habitat specific species. So if we're not here to increase or benefit or clean up or take care of these wetland ecosystems and these wetland habitats, then we're going to see a drastic reduction of species in those habitats. So there are lots and lots of trails that lead into the meadows. If you like it a little bit more in the sun and want to get a nice little warm walk in, some shaded areas. Ooh, there goes a hawk, red tail. So I hope that I've done enough to encourage you guys to get out to Eagle Point MetroPark and explore it a little bit. There's lots of cool trails, there's lots of wildlife out here that you can observe, from birds to snakes to frogs that we've seen. There's a whole variety of different things that you guys can look at and observe. If you're a photographer, there's plenty of opportunities here. If you're just an overall lover of nature, perfect spot for you to be. If you just like taking walks, also excellent place to go. There's paddling access at this park as well. To the west there's the drive-in, which has some prairies and different things that you can walk through and explore butterflies and different things. Lots and lots of really cool habitat here. And if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to contact us, eriemetroparks.org, or give us a call. Be happy to help you guys or point you guys in the direction of making your stay in your metro parks excellent.